Hey everyone, it's David Chen, and I'm here today with at Joy of Napping on Twitter, and we're here to talk about Always Be My Maybe, which is a new romantic comedy that just hit Netflix. Now, this movie is pretty exciting because it stars two Asian leads, which is something you rarely see in a romantic comedy.
Asian American.
Asian American leads, played by Randall Park and Ali Wong. And what we're going to do here today is we're going to watch the movie in front of us on this iPad, and then talk about some of the details from this movie that kind of resonated with us as Asian Americans.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to fast forward past the boring bits when we don't have anything to say. But here we go. Let's watch Always Be My Maybe on Netflix.
All right.
All right, let's pause here for a moment. A lot of details about this house that feel very true to life in terms of my own personal Asian American
I think we're going to have a
experience.
lot to say about the first third of this movie.
Yeah, for sure. So this girl is a latchkey kid, which I was as well to some degree. My parents both worked at a Chinese restaurant, and so often my brother and I were left to fend for ourselves. And my mom would often cook for us, so I wouldn't necessarily need to cook my own food, wouldn't need to make my own spam and rice. But we'd often spend nights home alone because our parents were working really hard.
Yeah. Did your parents work 7 days a week?
Yeah.
So did mine.
Yeah. So a lot of the feeling of this scene is very true to life. And you see the set dressing in this scene is also exquisite. There is a little rice cooker in the corner. Definitely something that you'll see in a lot of Asian American households.
And let me just tell you, this movie won my heart when she walks in the door and she takes her shoes off, and there's a giant pile of shoes. They did not need to do that, but that is standard issue East Asian, around the world, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
In fact, you sometimes yell at me for getting past the vestibule and having, adopted filthy American habits of not taking my shoes off right away.
It's true. And also in this scene, you see that the character, Sasha Tran, is making her own food. She's kind of standing on a little footstool, kind of indicating that she is a person, like many Asian Americans who feel like they maybe have to grow up earlier than they would otherwise have to because they're taking care of themselves. So
yeah. I also love in the living room that she has plastic on the couch that feels very, very true to my own experience, which is the moment you have a little bit of money, you might get kind of a nice thing, but then you protect it hermetically, so it's incredibly uncomfortable to sit on. I think I still remember sticking to my Aunt Joanna's furniture when I was in the house. She also had a rule of only 2 squares of toilet paper to be used at a time because it's just a waste of money to use more.
Indeed. All right, let's keep going. Okay, let's stop for a second and just...
We've only let 3 more seconds go by, and we have more feelings.
So, yeah, she's making rice and spam. Now, spam is not something that my family personally used a lot, but it is something that many Asian American families do integrate as part of their diet.
Well, especially in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, especially,
they're living in California, so on the West Coast. We definitely ate it growing up. But what I love is that this is actually a really sad dinner of sliced spam and rice, but she's kind of making it a little bit fancier. So that's what we would do.
Yeah, and then the furikake that she's spraying, that is something that was very common in my household when we were growing up, is you can go to a Chinese grocery store and buy basically... It's flavoring for rice.
Yeah.
It's salt flavoring for rice. But it is the most basic salt flavoring. It's the thing that you add when you have nothing else to add, right?
In my house, it would have been from a jar of pre-fried onion.
Yeah.
Did you ever have that?
We'd have the dried pork that you'd mix in with the rice. So, but yeah, definitely a sad meal, but not something that feels unrealistic in any way.
Yeah.
All right, let's pause here for a moment. A few things to point out. So these are both, the primary leads of the film are both Asian characters, but it's unclear exactly what ethnicity Sasha is.
Yes, whereas it's really clear that Marcus is Korean.
Marcus is Korean. Sasha is played by Ali Wong. In real life, Ali is Chinese and Vietnamese. It's not super clear what she is in this film, but I think what is clear is that she's not Korean, right?
Yeah. If I had to guesstimate based on the set dressing, it seems like she might be Chinese, but then her last name is Tran, which is probably Vietnamese, maybe Chinese. So yeah.
But what? So I'm a little disappointed that the film didn't dive more into that because like in real life, like my brother is Chinese, he's married to a Korean woman, and seeing these two cultures like come together in their marriage and kind of manifest itself in food is like really interesting. But the movie didn't really have that much to say about that. We do see in this scene that Marcus's mother is making kimchi jjigae, which is an extremely popular kimchi-based dish. It's like a very common staple. It's like spaghetti and meatballs or chicken soup, and it's also like pretty easy to make, relatively speaking, when it comes to.
If you've gone to all the trouble to make kimchi, which is
right.
like fermented in your refrigerator for quite a while.
Correct, but it is something that is on the menu at virtually every Korean restaurant that I've ever been to.
It's also very Korean. Like you don't see versions of it in Chinese or Japanese cuisine. It's pretty specific.
Yeah, it definitely distinguishes itself as a Korean dish, and that becomes important later on in the film.
I think it's also really nice that they chose it because kimchi, like every household has their own little version of kimchi, and so their own personal recipes. So it definitely anchors you in this very homey specific way. The amount of like attention and care that goes into making kimchi. I think you're a big fan of kimchi jjigae.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. All right, let's move on. All right, so there's a few things that we should comment on about this scene. First of all, Marcus's mother says, "Call me Judy," which kind of indicates that these parents might not be first generation, right?
I mean, this is the only thing in the whole movie that like took me out of it. It's not that I think no Asian parent is capable of that. It's more just like I don't think it's a first generation thing. I think of it as a distinctly American thing. When I would go to other people's houses, they would say, "Call me Margaret," and I like could not bring myself to do it. I can't call his parents by their first names to this day. And more typically, it'd be like, "Call me Auntie."
So that's something to note. She indicates the usage of scissors as a common...
I think that's super typical.
I can't speak for Korean Americans because I'm not Korean, but like certainly in Chinese culture, people use scissors all the time in the kitchen to like...
Our friend Helen says it's extremely Korean.
You can go to a restaurant and like if you're having dim sum, which is something that happens later in the film, like they'll use scissors to like cut up the food, which is not something that typically happens in an American restaurant. So that's also something worth noting.
Oh, and can we just pause and note that she actually praises this girl?
Yeah.
So praise is not like something I heard before the age of 30. So, I think that's like also another indication that she's become more Americanized.
which
Judy.
is not a bad thing. So let's move on. All right, let's pause here for a moment.
So much freedom.
So much freedom these characters have.
So much freedom. Why aren't they studying for the SAT?
Agreed. That is a little unrealistic, but what is realistic is they are eating Pocky, which is a very popular Asian snack that you can find in Asian grocery stores.
Is it Japanese, I think?
I think it originates from Japan.
But back in this time period, it was like harder to get. It's more believable that like you'd live in San Francisco and get it. Like it was really hard for us to get where I grew up in the South.
Now it's like much more common.
Yeah, you can get it pretty much everywhere. Even sometimes American grocery stores have it.
Indeed. All right.
Because it's amazing.
It's basically a cracker dipped in chocolate, so.
Which is amazing.
All right, let's stop here for a second.
I really liked this sequence because they're flipping between these very all-American things like going and dressing up for Wayne's World as Wayne's World for or Wayne's World characters for Halloween, which feels like, again, that's more freedom than I had. That's a more Americanized experience than I had growing up. But then this dumpling making is so traditional.
Yeah. And I think it shows you that like many Asian Americans often like need to not need to, or they get to navigate both worlds, right? Of like being part of American culture, but also holding on to a lot of the traditions from your parents. So if you've seen like the Pixar short film Bao, you might have an understanding of what process is being depicted here. They're making homemade dumplings, which is basically taking raw meat and putting it into dumpling skin and then like folding it and pinching it in a specific way. And you can see here that there's I think there's a little like water bowl there.
Yeah, sometimes it's egg yolk, sometimes it's water to sort of seal the edges of the dumpling. And it's really labor intensive. So when you do this setup, you don't make 20 of these, you make like 200 of them. Yeah. And so you sit and spend an entire day chatting with each other. And it's like I thought it was a beautiful way to depict that they actually have a very intimate relationship, even though she's like the neighbor or like her son's friend, that she really is kind of part of the family.
Yeah. Also, bonus points in this shot for all of this background set dressing, the plants, the little condiments near the stove.
I'm pretty sure this red-capped yellow jar is this thing called chili crisp, which is literally chili that's fried in oil, and it's used as a condiment, and it is incredible.
Yeah, yeah. So bonus points for the authenticity there for the set dressing. Feels extremely realistic. Let's move on.
So in this shot, we see, this is how they tell us that Marcus's mother has passed away. And this is pretty typical to show like a photo plus some incense. And you see actually bowls of fruit on each side, which is also pretty typical part of the mourning process. So it would not be unusual for the photo to stay up and the incense to stay up for years, and it's part of like your way of honoring your ancestors and the people that came before you. So I thought this was really great, as opposed to doing like a funeral scene, which
Right.
would have been more typical.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. All right, let's pause here for a second. A few things to point out about this set of scenes. One is that one of the great things about this movie is, as I mentioned earlier on, it's a movie that has two Asian American leads in a romantic comedy, which is rare. And you get to see Asian Americans doing things, just doing regular things, hanging out, you know.
Asian Americans, they're people too.
Many Asian American parents or Asian parents in movies are often depicted in one way, and the ones
The
in this-
tiger mom.
yeah, the tiger mom, like Michelle Yeoh's character in Crazy Rich Asians, for instance, right? Whereas the Asian American parents in this movie are very supportive, very funny, very Americanized, and I think that's
And they're different from each other.
yeah, they're distinct, and I really appreciated seeing like that diversity of Asian American parental experiences.
Like, let's just be clear. Our parents, who are closer to the tiger parents, would not be cool with walking in on us smoking weed.
Correct.
Like, that felt very different
Yeah.
than anything you've ever seen in the movies. However, the adorable dancing that the dad does, it really felt like something literally my dad would do. Now that he's been here for a long time, he probably would actually have moved pretty close to how that dad did. And I thought that was very sweet.
Also in this scene, we see Marcus taking care of his father, giving him insulin injections. And that is extremely common in Asian American cultures. Asian cultures is like the child takes care of the parent. Often the parent...
Multi-generational living.
Yeah, the parents will like move in. That it's just like extremely common and expected even, right? That the Asian American kids will take care of their parents. Certainly something that like you and I feel an obligation to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an obligation, but it's more just like it's your role, Like
Yeah.
it's not something you would question.
Yeah,
In
it's
fact,
just-
it would feel weird not to.
It'd feel weird not to.
Yeah.
So this all feels like very true to life. Now, obviously, Marcus has other issues with Arrested Development that go beyond just his duties.
And maybe
to
that's
his
why
parents.
he hasn't moved out.
Yeah. But this whole sequence felt, very intimate in terms of like this kid taking care of his father and very true to life.
It's true that his dad probably doesn't need somebody else to inject his arm with insulin, but he's there to support him every step of the way, every day. And for somebody who lost their mother when they were young, like it actually like really moved me, this scene.
How much money do you have now?
He's serious.
Oh, I just read you're getting married to that guy, your manager. Seems great. Older than I thought, but good. How old is he?
All right, let's pause here for a moment.
There is so much in this scene.
Yeah,
so much.
First of all, it might seem invasive to most people if somebody were to ask you how much money you have, but this is something that many Asian parents
So
are either
normal.
wondering or will straight up ask you about to your face.
I mean, and not just these kinds of questions, all kinds of incredibly pointed personal questions. And you're like, I just met you.
Yes.
How much do you weigh? Okay.
Ali Wong's character makes a reference to how Marcus's father has not aged a day, and I can say that my parents also are aging very well, and this seems to be a common trend. That,
Yes. My mother is 70, and she got into a fight with a Seattle bus driver because she was using the senior citizen discount, and he said he hates it when people abuse the system.
So definitely something that felt true to life there as well. And then just the asking of the evasive questions, the sharing incredibly brutally honest, unnecessary things like, I thought your fiance seems a lot older than I thought he would be.
Yeah, like slightly passive aggressive, but it's so direct that it's actually just aggressive.
Yeah, it's just aggressive, and it's like, okay, yeah.
But in a nice way.
Kind of, yeah. And you just kind of like, just got to deal with it. Just got to roll with it.
I have to say, I mean, we've pointed out some things that maybe culturally would be uncomfortable or different for Americans, but that I feel totally cool with. This is not one that I think, like, we can let this part of our culture die out, in my opinion.
Agree to disagree. All right, let's move on.
You guys are here.
Who picked you up from the airport?
I got car service.
Oh, no. Did you have to pay tip?
No, Dad. I jumped out when he slowed down at a stop sign.
All right, let's stop here for a second. I don't know what it is about Asian parents picking up people from the airport, but my parents are like super into it, and they would never want me to take a taxi if they are at all physically capable of picking me up.
My father will take the light rail to the bus in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, in order to connect, to get home, to avoid paying for a taxi.
Yes.
And he
let alone the tip.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
but I do feel like one of the subtexts here, Marcus's father is more working class, and this family is a little more well-to-do. So whatever, they were doing that kept them busy late at night, they're kind of more chic and they're more put together. And I definitely recognize a certain type of parent from this.
all right, let's pause here for a second.
So we can celebrate Baskin, the #1 shot of the movie.
So the reason the shot is awesome is because you see the Steadicam shot that go through the house. You see these young kids who are just trying to have fun, remove their shoes, run through the house, then put the shoes back on. Incredibly polite behavior. Your parents trained you well, Asian kids.
Yeah, this whole thing could have started in the backyard, but it didn't.
No, they just did it to show you that some habits are deeply ingrained, and what's great about
it's like breathing.
What's great about movies like this is like when a moment like this happens, it feels like they made it for people like us.
Yes,
right.
You feel so seen.
Yes. It's like this is made by somebody who has like our experiences.
Yes.
Right. So, very nice.
Okay. I think we got to break down the dim sum scene.
Yes, we do.
Starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
Full giant plastic tumblers of hot tea.
Yep.
And then cheap ass chopsticks that she starts rubbing against each other.
So that you don't get splinters from
right,
it,
because they're so cheap and they were attached to each other. And she just does it instinctively. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. Another thing this scene nails about the dim sum experience is that you will get better service if you know the language. And there is like a hierarchy of languages that you can know. But Cantonese is what Marcus is speaking in this scene. In our neighborhood, there's dim sum restaurants where the waitresses also speak Mandarin as well. So oftentimes, but dim sum is from...
It's from Hong Kong. So people speak Cantonese who make it, usually.
Yeah, and...
if it's good.
The service is good if you can speak the language, and it can often be extremely bad if you don't, as depicted in the scene.
It can be incredibly bad even if you do speak the language, just to be clear. But it is true that dim sum is a little bit of an every person for themselves fight for survival when it comes to like flagging people's attention. So you do want to strategize, put your best foot forward, and try to get the best service you can.
100%. And then you can't really see the dishes here.
But we know what they are.
I'm pretty sure it's shumai and also chicken feet, which are two of my favorite dim sum specialties.
Yes, so chicken feet is the dish that's second closest to the edge of the table. Then there's what I'm pretty sure is shajao or hargao. Mm-hmm. And then finally beyond that, her arm is obscuring it here, but I'm pretty sure it's pot stickers, which is not as Cantonese necessarily. But the chicken feet is the part that really you just do not order this if you aren't Chinese. I mean, it's possible, but most people don't even know about it because there's not a corollary to that in American cuisine.
I think most people would find the idea of eating chicken feet to be revolting, but it's like one of my favorite things.
I don't eat chicken feet.
Yeah, but it's great. It's fantastic. You should check it out. All right, let's move on. All right, let's pause here for a moment.
The Korean spa.
This is a scene that happens between Marcus and his father. They have a heart-to-heart in a Korean spa. Many people might not have been to one of these before.
Yeah.
It is a unique experience.
I have actually not been to one before. There are a couple here in Seattle, but I have friends who have been to them. I have friends who go to them that are Korean, and I have a few friends that have gone that are not Korean, but other ethnicities of Asian. And it is specific.
Yeah.
Specifically, it is an experience, like an American spa is for like tranquility and for you to like connect with yourself and maybe to have some pampering. The Korean spa is for you to be flayed, basically. So like the skin is taken off of your body at an incredibly aggressive level. And I just love that they have this whole scene that easily could have taken place in one of the sets they already had, like Marcus's kitchen. But instead, they bother to set up this whole spa thing. And then they do talk about how much dead skin is coming off of them, and you can even see it. So I was just, again, like, thank you to this movie for showing another little subpart of a subculture.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, let's stop here. This is a pretty classic moment in the movie.
Classic because in the 2 weeks this movie has been out,
Yeah.
it has already been memed to death all over the place.
I do think it's pretty hilarious that Ali Wong was one of the writers of this story, and she wrote as two of her love interests, Keanu Reeves and Daniel Day Kim.
Yeah.
Arguably two of the most desirable men of at least partial Asian descent.
Oh, I would put,
Yeah.
two of my top three.
Indeed.
I mean, the third one being you.
Oh, thanks.
Not
Thanks.
Stephen Yeun from Burning and The Walking Dead, but also you.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Let's move on. So you may have noticed that Marcus is wearing a Stay Angry shirt. It is a T-shirt in support of, derived from the Angry Asian Man blog, which is a very popular blog in Asian American circles, written by Phil Yu. And it basically chronicles politics and race from an Asian American perspective.
And just think about the lack of Asian American voices discussing Asian American ideas and issues over the last 10 plus years. There's just not been much of a space for it. It's not like we've had incredibly commercially successful magazines or, alternative forms of media. And so that blog, especially the idea that it's angry, that it's a voice that isn't passive, that isn't academic, clinical, emotionally neutral, all the things that are stereotypically true of Asians. That blog has just had such an important voice, I feel like. And
Agreed.
So it is an amazing moment to see that shirt.
Yeah, in a movie that is going to be seen by millions of people.
Yeah.
So awesome job. Shout out to Angry Asian Man. Definitely a blogger and a website that I support. So
What's this?
A receipt. We went to your new restaurant in San Francisco, and we didn't tell them we were your parents, and we pay everything in full price.
The scene is very moving to me.
tell us why.
Well, first of all, they are killing themselves to try to get back in her favor. Pounding down the door of her other restaurant, flying cross country without telling her, tracking her down on Google. And she is just not giving an inch because she's so angry about the feelings of abandonment that she has. And they are putting a pretty brave face on it. Like, we just decided we had free airline vouchers. And it feels like about the level at which many emotional discussions actually take place. But then, because they're not Call Me Judy. They're not as in touch with their feelings and talking about things openly. But they say, hey, we know that you're a little mad. And she's a little. And I don't think they're trying to minimize it. I think they're just uncomfortable. And then they do show that they have been supporting her in their own way. And you think this scene is going to have another 2 minutes of speeches by both sides and tears and hugs. But that's all she needs. That's all because she gets that is their love language
Yeah.
is like paying full price and having to tip on top of that full price is a big deal to them.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I loved this.
Yeah, I think the idea of like, yeah, the parents paying full price and not trying to curry favor or get freebies, like that for them is a huge sacrifice, and that's all you really need. Like, evaluating good parenting is often not about absolutes, right? It's not about like they must do X, Y, Z. It's more about how far out of their comfort zone are they operating. And in this case, they're clearly operating like way out of their comfort zone.
Well, they met her more than halfway, right? They did. They met her on her terms.
There's also this phenomenon of like many of the parents who busted their ass working hard while these like Asian American kids were kids, then grow up and then eventually retire and have much more free time.
Yeah.
Right? And
they want to make up for the
yeah.
lost time. It's not like they don't rue it. I think that my parents definitely have. They worked 7 days a week. So did your parents.
Same with my parents. And so
Yeah.
like, and now I spend much more time with my parents having meaningful conversations and meaningful interactions now. And so this part of like when I was a kid, the idea of the immigrant Asian parent was like that they would work so hard and they work 7 days a week. And then like now that I'm older, that perception, like that portrayal has evolved to this, which is that they now want to make time for their kids, right? This I've never seen like them get to this stage in popular culture before.
Right.
So it's really cool to see. All right, let's move on.
It's all her recipes. This is what I want to do, Marcus. The kind of food that makes people feel at home.
I'm tearing up again.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
So, it's a very lovely ending where she decides to make the restaurant based on her on Marcus's mom's recipes.
It's believable because she spent so much time in that kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, when Marcus's mother dies, his father like can't even find the coffee filters. I don't know what their home life is, him and his dad, in terms of what they eat. But I have to imagine part of the reason this scene is emotional for me is like that's probably the first time he's had his mom's soup since his mom passed away, right? And so like this idea that people could preserve these memories for you is like just waterworks for me.
Well, I think that brings us about to the end of the film. Any closing thoughts, if anyone's even made it to the end of this video?
Oh, I just love that they show the actual childhood photos of these actors at the end. I feel like it's obviously it's a callback to the opening credits, but we all come from somewhere, and they take the moment to show that. And I don't know, I just found this whole thing from start to finish incredibly charming.
Agreed completely. Had a great time with it. Love seeing these characters on screen. Love the world that they created around them, and
I
love.
thought it was incredibly funny too.
Yeah, very funny, and love that it spoke to experiences that many Asian Americans have had. It's amazing to see our stories up on the big screen when you see movies like Crazy Rich Asians, when you see Always Be My Maybe. These are stories that I did not know if I would ever be able to see told on the small screen or the big screen in my lifetime. And I'm
fresh off the boat.
So glad to be seeing them now, and to have like everyone I know be able to enjoy them as well. So it is just really powerful, and I'm glad this movie exists. And you should check it out. It's on Netflix right now. It's Always Be My Maybe. I'm David Chen. This is at Joy of Napping on Twitter. And I'll be making a couple videos per month on this YouTube channel all year long. So subscribe, hit the bell icon if you want to get notified every time I make a new video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.